Hi, I'm John DeVore. Welcome back to the DeVore Fidelity YouTube channel. The last and only video I've done so far is the one I shot yesterday, which was our introduction. And in that video, I was suggesting different types of videos that I would put up as content on this channel. One of which was going through my records and finding some of my favorites and talking about them, including concert records, because concert venues these days are closed because of the COVID-19 outbreak. Today I was going to shoot a couple of videos and I was trying to figure out which one would be the first one, and the decision was made for me because today is March 25th and it is Aretha Franklin's birthday, the Queen of Soul herself. So the first records I'm going to talk about are going to be her records, and I have a few favorites, but first I'm going to start with her live album, Live at the Fillmore. This was shot at this was recorded at the Fillmore West in California in 1971. It's an incredible performance, filled. By the way, I'm just going to pause for a second and introduce Roxy. This is Roxy. She is one of the Factory Cats. So as I was saying, this is a live performance. One of the things I've always thought about Aretha Franklin, actually, you know what? I'm going to back up. I guess I was late to the game appreciating Aretha Franklin. In college, I hadn't had much experience or exposure to her other than hearing Chain and Respect on the radio, the oldies stations. I guess at that point, this was the 80s, and the only real exposure I had to her was some of her later stuff, or her 80s stuff, like the Freeway of Love and the Pink Cadillac and that kind of stuff, and it wasn't crazy about it. It wasn't really my thing. So I sort of dismissed her in that at that point. It wasn't until much later that I realized that some of my favorite songs were directly connected to her. And there's one song in particular which I will get to later on in this video. But one of the things that I feel like she's not appreciated for is her musicianship. Obviously, she's known for her weapons-grade, powerful, and explosively dynamic voice, unmatched in a lot of ways. And she came from an era before the sort of melisma style, not as, sort of the Mariah Careys and the Whitney Houstons certainly owe a debt of gratitude to Aretha, but Aretha's style was not as Baroque as theirs, and it had this sort of direct power and she had an unparalleled ability to turn on the dynamic contrast, which made it, as far as I can tell, made it very difficult to record her. She's overloading mics all the time, or they're having to ride the pots. The engineers are trying desperately to capture the quiet passages, but be ready at any moment for the unbelievable power of her voice to be unleashed. So I think she was very challenging to record. This is a live recording. It's not the best sounding. It's great sounding. My initial favorite track on this is Dr. Feelgood. It's the opener on side 2. And man, it is good. It's her on piano as well, and that's another underappreciated thing for her. Obviously, her voice is the obvious to enjoying and appreciating Aretha Franklin, but she was a badass keyboard player. She was a great pianist. And her piano accompaniment, I think, always goes unappreciated. Not unlike Nina Simone, whose piano musicianship was as good or better than her vocal musicianship. And she was a stunning piano player, better than huge amounts of her male contemporaries. And I think Aretha Franklin is a similar case. But As far as this record is concerned, she has a lineup like nothing else. Ray Charles is actually pulled up from the audience at one point, and he plays along with one of the songs. But the basic band is King Curtis's band, and so it's got the best groove and best funk. I mean, we're talking about Cornell Dupree, Bernard Purdie. I mean, these guys had the New Orleans style groove like no one else, and here they are backing up the most powerful voice in her prime, 1971. So that is a killer live album. There's another live album. It's not exactly a live album, but this is another interesting one. This is, so Aretha, as I'm sure everyone knows, she grew up in the church. Her father was a preacher, and she attained stardom as a singer in the gospel choir, as a soloist. And you can tell immediately by her voice that her chops were honed in the church. This is, I think, the best example. This is essentially that part of her repertoire all on one album, and it's beautifully recorded, and it's a huge double album. It's incredibly powerful, and it's a perfect sort of moment in time for her. And recently, because of her passing, there was a movie made of the making of this album, and that recently was released. She, for some reason, didn't want it released during her lifetime. So after she passed away, the movie was finally released, and I haven't seen it yet, but it is at the top of my list of movies to see. Another nice thing about this record, this is 1972, again at her peak. A recent thing on this one is the release of the complete Amazing Grace recordings. So while the original release was a double record, this is a quadruple record packed with that material and lots more. Beautifully packaged, a lot of extra bonus material. It's killer and well worth it. Probably for less money than you would pay for a really clean original copy of that first record. As far as my favorite of her records, there's a lot to choose from, but I have a definite favorite. It's not this one, but I'm just going to go quickly through some of these. So these are a little earlier. This one is 1968. This one has the classic Think. This one is another absolutely fantastic album. Son of a Preacher Man is on this one. Probably the most famous one, this guy here, I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, which has Respect on it, and Dr. Feelgood for that matter. Killer record. All of these have been reissued many times, of course, but my favorite record, my favorite Aretha Franklin record is Young, Gifted, and Black. This is an amazing record, and this is the one that brought me back, brought me to see Aretha Franklin in a new light. And the song was Rocksteady. I heard that song, it didn't occur to me that it was Aretha Franklin, but it's always been one of my favorite songs. And that backbeat, that groove, that it's a rocksteady beat, just sticks in my mind like nothing else, and it's always sort of running in the back of my head. That groove has been used by a lot of other people, and when I realized that Rocksteady was Aretha, and it's one of her songs, I had to find it, and then I got this album, and so many of the songs on this record are powerful. Again, this is at her peak. This is 1972. So many good tracks on this. Aside from Rocksteady, we've got Daydreaming, we've got I've Been Loving You Too Long, First Snow and Kokomo. they're really good, and it's a different side of Aretha Franklin. So this was recorded actually the same year as the gospel material from Amazing Grace, and I guess this is sort of her version of maybe Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, some activism going on in here. The Nina Simone song, obviously Young, Gifted, and Black, is the title track on this. There's more of a political statement going on in this one, but it's just so good. And again, with that song, Rocksteady, I had a Monkey House party here, which is a party where a bunch of people come and we play music, and the theme of that particular one was female artists. And we were just playing all different kinds of stuff, and I thought I would play this album from Aretha. But I played it on reel-to-reel tape. So I didn't just go right away to track 3 and cue up Rocksteady. I played it from the beginning. So there are 2 songs, both great songs, but not big, powerful, catchy tunes. So I played it, the first 2 songs. People here, just the people who were in here who knew I was playing tape were kind of into the idea of playing, listening to reel to reel, because not a lot of people get to hear it. And it's a pre-recorded 7-inch reel. This is not some kind of a master dub or anything like that. But it's a 7.5 IPS, and it's pretty good sounding. And then track 3 comes on, Rocksteady, and it went from 5 people in here to every single person who was at the party. There was probably a little over 20, maybe 22 people. Every single one of those people showed up and came in here and sat down and listened to that song. It has a draw like almost no other song that I can think of. Even if people aren't aware of what the song is or who sang it, it is just, it's a perfect song. And so that's my Aretha Franklin video. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy birthday, and let's all remember the Queen of Soul. She left us with tons of amazing music, and I hope this, if you're not already into her, I hope this helps you find a path into collecting some of her records or going on some of the streaming services and exploring it right now. And until next time, thanks very much, and I'll see you.